Live from Liverpool, we need to talk about ghosts with Kevin Eustace.
Yes, it's Sunday. It's time once more to delve into the paranormal with me, Mr. Kevin Eustace. Oh, I've called myself Mr. there. How very quaint. I hope that you're all fantastically well, as is the saying of us podcasters. We all wish you're well. Wouldn't you think, like tulpas, the way that their thought forms created by positive thoughts or negative thoughts? You'd think with the amount of podcasters saying, I hope you're all well at the start of the show, that everybody would be well, wouldn't you? Maybe that's a shot in the arm against tulpas there. I just don't know. Anyway, what have we got in store for you this week? Well, we have an amazing interview. So I was lucky enough to speak to a person that I know, a good mate of mine in real life. I used to work with him. I met him over 20 years ago. And yeah, we got talking. I've never, ever, interestingly, for me anyway, because as you all know, I always pride myself on the fact whenever I meet someone, I go, tell me a ghost story. But me and Tony, who you're going to hear from today, we've never really talked about ghosts. And he got in touch a month ago or so and said, I've just been listening to your show. I've got some stories that's happened to me. And I was like, why have I never known about this? We need to get you on. So we did get him on. Just FYI, the audio on this is completely understandable. The first 8 minutes or so, it's a little bit sounds like Tony's on the phone. You can still understand him perfectly well. But then it gets much better because I think there was an issue with his headphones he was using. He just stopped using them. So there's a message for anyone who's going to use Skype or anything to do an interview with me or Zoom. Don't use headphones. Just speak into your phone because it clears up exceptionally well. But either way, the stories Tony's got are brilliant. And I mean, like one in particular, it's so visual, and you're about to hear it, so I'm not going to spoil it. I can't get it out of my mind ever since hearing it. I genuinely can't. Yes, terrifying. I need to say a big thank you to my partner Becca today as well, because I'm running exceptionally late today. We were meant to have all sorts of plans, and one thing they don't tell you about podcasting is you need an exceptionally understanding partner when you're doing it. And if you don't have that, you're going to be buggered. But thankfully I do, so I've just had to pop my head in and say, little behind schedule, so although we're already behind schedule, we're going to be further behind schedule. And thankfully she was like, that's okay, I can pop out and get some things. And she could be a dragon and be like, no, you promised, but she's not. So big thank you to Becca. Not that she's going to listen to this, because although she comes on the show, she's not a fan of the show. Anyway, thank yous out the way. I want to say another thank you to all of our wonderful Patreons who keep us going, literally. If you want to become a Patreon, go to patreon.com/we need to talk about ghosts. If you've had a hard 18 months, and let's be honest, who hasn't, why won't you treat yourself? Hey, it's only a couple of quid a month, and there's about 200 shows on there now. And you can just listen at your leisure. Yeah, cancel whenever you want. And you know what? If you can't support the show monetarily, that's absolutely fine. But tell your mates and maybe leave a review. A nice review, you know what I mean? But anyway, next week we're going to do our Patreon sing-alongs for everyone. So if you signed up this week and you're like, hey, he's not singing my name. Yes, I'm not. I'm sorry. But I will be next week. We're going to have a big jamboree about all of you wonderful Patreons next week. Anything else to report? No, I don't think so. I think we should just crack on to this interview with Tony because it's wonderful. And it's very truthful. You can hear in Tony's voice and his cadence the authenticity of his experiences, and it's just wonderful. Just doing the edit prior to recording this part, and again, I was getting chills listening to bits. So let me know what you think about this. I think it's a phenomenal series of stories, authentic to the bone and chilling to the bone too, to boot. Yes. This is my interview with Mr. Tony Cassidy. Enjoy. Okay, so it's that time of the week where we get somebody on to tell us ghost stories. Hooray! And I have a really good treat for everyone here today. I've got one of my oldest work companions here on the other side of this Zoom call, Mr. Tony Cassidy. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Kevin. Are you okay?
I am. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Apart from when you said oldest work companion, I hope you didn't mean like in terms of age.
No. I mean, because I was thinking about it. I've known you now close to 20 years, isn't it? Really, I think.
Yeah. So we originally met while we were working on the phones in a. Well, I don't know whether we can name places.
Oh yeah, you can name places. Yeah, I think it's defunct now. Anyway, Vertex, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gone. So we were working for Orange, weren't we, at the time? I think when we first met
Yeah.
on that campaign, and then obviously we both went our separate ways for a little bit, and then I think it was about 2008, wasn't it? We ended up back working in for what was HBoss again, which is
Yeah.
also gone now. Yeah, and we got to stay in some lovely hotels in Leeds for about 4 or 5 weeks, didn't we?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. There was one of those weeks when we were working away in Leeds. I remember me and you tallied up how many pints we drank in a week, and it was something. It was over 40 each, and
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't do that now. I'd literally die now if I
Oh,
tried that.
I drink shandy now, mate. Like I can't even deal with I can't deal with the hangovers the next day. So just
No, exactly. I'm the same, but I don't drink now if unless I mean I'll choose to on occasion, but like most of the time I make the judgment call of saying no, this isn't worth the hangover.
yeah, definitely. I'm the same. I mean, I do occasionally like bite the bullet and have a drink if everyone else is, but I always regret it the next day.
Yeah,
Anxiety is real.
yeah, it
um,
really is. Yeah, existential alcohol dread. So anyway, so you messaged me and said that you've been listening to the show, which was brilliant and very unexpected. And then we started talking on Facebook, and you've got a few personal ghost tales, haven't you? Which is very chilling.
yeah, I do. And to be honest, I obviously have listened to most of the, even though I'm like a late comer to your show, I've listened to a lot of the, I've listened to all the new ones and a lot of the older ones. And I guess like when they started telling their stories, it started making me think of my own experiences, and like some people that you've had on, I guess you don't always know what they are, but you know that they scared the absolute shit out of you at the time. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, so obviously where I live is in Kirby, and at the back of my estate is a big, massive field, and there's a big church there, which obviously you know of, which is
Hmm.
called St. Chad's, and I think it's like a really, really old church. And all the older lads who we used to hang around with us used to tell us all these stories about like a certain ghost that was called the White Lady, and obviously probably all areas have similar
Yeah,
stories where they all have this one ghost. And so in Kirby it was the White Lady, and um, basically one day we're all playing on the field. It starts to get quite late at night, and the older lads start saying, "Come on, we'll go over to the church, and we'll see if we can
yeah,
see anything." And obviously, being a lot younger, even though I was probably at the time terrified, thinking, "Oh, I don't want to do this."
yeah.
Obviously, just went along with it. So the church has got pretty much a big, massive front entrance, but at the back, at the time, it also had a similar entrance at the very back of it. However, the doors at the back were all bricked up.
Hmm.
Down down to the left hand side of that staircase that led up to this brick wall was like what everyone used to say was like a dungeon. And whatever, it probably wasn't a dungeon. It was just because I doubt churches have dungeons, but it
Yeah.
was just like it was just stairs down into what was underneath the church, and it had like a metal door on it. So obviously all the older lads start, you know, shouting for like this white lady to come. Obviously, when I say older, they must have only been about 10 or 11.
Yeah.
So that they're obviously all shouting all things and trying to goad whatever might be there, to come out. It went on for about, I'd say, 25, 30 minutes with nothing. So we just start doing other stuff. And then one of the other lads starts saying, shouting all, abusive type things. So we all walk over to this, like, up these stairs and up to this wall. And we just hear this big, massive thud
Hmm.
on the wall twice. So, like, not like even a knocking, like a thud through brick walls. And we're like, all of us ran just out of the way, jumped over the wall, and stood at, like, outside, like, the church grounds.
Hmm.
And because, like, the older lads had said, if we stood outside the church grounds, those those walls were built with the old church, so they were blessed, and the white lady couldn't get out,
Right, I get it. Yeah.
beyond the walls. So we were all standing behind there. So again, after about 10, 15 minutes of plucking up some courage, we all walked back over towards the wall. And as we get to the wall, they started calling the white lady names that, you know, not nice people call women sometimes, beginning with S, so I won't
Right.
say it. You can imagine. And as we've got over, like right by the stairs again, we just heard a voice shouting no. dead loud, and it came from the stairs down below, and it wasn't. It didn't sound like a normal voice. It was like a deep bellow, angry no.
Yeah.
And then obviously we just all ran, darted over the walls, jumped through nettles.
Yeah.
One of the lads had a broken arm and couldn't get over the wall.
Christ.
It was just like, it was like pandemonium. Everybody running for the hills.
But what was the
the
voice? Sorry to interrupt. Sorry. What was the voice like? Was it male, female? Was it?
If I had to put a gender on it, I would say it was male,
Right.
because it wasn't a female voice. But it didn't sound like it was. It sounds bad, weird saying, but it didn't sound like it was human.
Wow.
It was like it was just like a horrible no.
Oh.
And obviously, when the two thuds that we heard, you could probably say maybe the vicar was on the other side of the wall and he thought, I'll get these. And
yeah.
But the voice, it didn't come from the same point as the thuds. It was horrible.
That's
it was both,
horrid.
At the time of being like, I think it was 7 or 8 or something like that. I'm not too sure, but it was bone chilling.
Yeah.
It was like one of those nights when you come home and, like, my dad was growing up. He wanted to be a priest, so he lived in the brotherhood. Yeah. So I've come home and I've said to my dad, like, what's happened? And obviously, like most mums and dads would probably say, oh, don't be daft. There's no such things as ghosts. And my dad was just like, you shouldn't mess around with things like that. And I was like, what? I was looking for some reassurance there, Mike. It was scary.
So yeah, and then obviously we ended up hanging around in those like churchyards for a while after that, and to be honest, nothing ever happened after that ever again. My next incident happened when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
So again, this isn't a really big story. It was just a brief moment. But again, a brief moment that was terrifying at the time. So I was 18 years old. I was sober. Definitely I think I'd been working in the day, and I've come home, not done anything. Probably like most 18 years old, stayed up late at night watching crap on telly. And I've gone to bed about 11 or 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock maybe the latest. Cold night, got in bed, going to sleep, fall asleep fine, no issues. Wake up, I think it must have been about 20 past 3. I had one of those old digital clocks, where you can see the red numbers.
Yeah,
and it was at the bottom of my bed, and it must have been about 20 past 3. And I've looked up, and I thought 20 past 3, but I was sweating. And I put my hands on the radiator, and the radiator was freezing. So I thought, that's a bit weird. I've got up, sat up, opened my window. I at the back of my house is the train track, so I used to sleep with the window shut, because if the train went past, it'd wake me up. But I thought, I'll just bite the bullet and keep it open. So I've opened it up, so I know I was awake. I wasn't, I wasn't like in a sleep, and there was a bit of I had my blinds open, so there was a bit of a light coming in as well. It wasn't pitch black. So I've turned over to the opposite side of my bed, which is on the opposite side from the window, where I have a chair, and sat in the chair was an old woman,
Fuck it out.
not moving, just an old lady, like grey, like not a nice facial expression on her face, but not a facial expression that was moving. It was just it was strange. It was like still. And
like, when you say grey, do you mean grey hair, grey skin? What, like
grey everything?
Right.
The whole thing was just grey. Obviously didn't look down long enough to see, like legs or anything like that. I could just sat in this chair. I've rolled over, looked at her, and as soon as I've seen her, I've just gone freezing, got under me covers, and like just faced the wall, and I stayed there for must have been 20 minutes. And then I started getting hotter and hotter and hotter, like to the point where I was boiling underneath these sheets.
Yeah.
And as I've turned back around, she's gone. And
what?
When I tell people that story, people say to me, don't be daft. It was probably clothes on your chair. And the only way I can say I know exactly what I saw and prove, I slept in bed in between my mum and dad that night, 18 years old. I came into my mum and dad's bedroom and I slept in between them in their double bed. And that's how scared I was.
Christ. And I mean, because there's loads of things going on there that you might have picked up on by listening to either this show or paranormal stuff in general. So things happening between 3 and 4 o'clock's a common thing.
Yeah.
3 o'clock's apparently the witching hour or whatever. But also there's a common thing. Whereas people say that they go cold during like a ghost appearing or something, it's actually the opposite. There's a lot of people who say it goes exceptionally hot.
Yeah.
And there's whilst there's an energy there or something, it doesn't sound like it was a nice person in general anyway.
Yeah, well, she does say she didn't move. She didn't do anything. Well, as far as I know, unless she was trying to touch me while I was asleep, or like when I was facing the other way. But when it happened, I just froze. I looked at her for about 10 seconds, thinking, what on earth's that?
Go on.
I even checked, like, I think like my nan had died when I was 16. So I thought, when I seen it, I thought, it might be my nan. And I was just looking. Yeah. And it wasn't me nan, do you know? Because the next day when I told me when my mum and dad woke up, my mum was saying, "Well, are you sure it wasn't your nan?" And then
I mean, I love the way they say that though, like that'd be that'd be okay. You sure it wasn't your nan? Yeah, it was actually. It's sound sort of thing.
The thing that I found quite odd, Kev, is that like most people, when you speak to them about like ghosts and stuff, they would say, "Don't be daft," and they don't believe in it. But like my mum and a lot of my mum's family didn't have that outlook, that view of ghosts, and I'll go into obviously next, why they had that outlook.
Yeah.
So the next day following that, anyway, my dad, who obviously was very religious, decided he was going to bless the room, which he did, and for a few days following, my friends stayed, and I never ever seen anything else in the house ever again. And still to this day, I never have.
Had your mum or your dad seen anything in the house prior to that? Like,
not prior to that, they did following that. And again, not really a scary one, if I'm honest. It's quite a nice one. So, I obviously told my mum and dad about that. And I'll tell you about their experience. But this was after I got told about like a family experience. So my mum and we'd had a dog from when I was about 5 or 6. And it was pretty much my dad's best mate, and the dog obviously, as they do, unfortunately, passed away. And my dad loved his computers, so he had an office off the hall, and facing the hall was the living room. So my dad spent most of his time in his office on his computer. And one day, I think my mum had like took him in his dinner or took him in a drink or something, and they were just talking at my dad's computer. And they both seen a dog come out of the living room and go upstairs.
Yeah. Wow. Both at the same time?
Both at the same time. Both seen the dog go upstairs. And my dad said, "We left the front door open." And they were like, no. And my dad was like, did you see the dog just run up the stairs? And my mum was like, yeah. So they both go upstairs. My dad first to get this dog, because obviously it's a strange dog in the house. And when they go up there, there was nothing there, and the front door was shut.
Wow. And was the same colour dog as the dog you'd had?
Yeah, a dark dog of similar size.
Wow.
Yeah. Madness.
That's mental. That is madness.
Yeah, but I say I've never since my my old lady in my bedroom.
I mean, I don't think you need to see anything else after that, though, because that's absolutely pant-wettingly terrifying.
I mean, there's probably been worse things in my room since then, Kev, but...
Probably been older women in your room since then as well. Sorry, go on. You were going to say about the reason why your mum's side...
No, following that incident of, like, being 18 and seeing that, and I say being scared to the point where I slept in my bed... the following, I don't know whether it was the following day or the following couple of days, I'd said to my mum, like, why were you not like, oh, I didn't, I don't believe you, don't be daft, you won't see things like that. And my mum just said, well, when she was like 18 or 19, she used to stay at my auntie's house quite a lot. And my auntie They just had my cousin. I think she was like 3 or 4 at the time when my mum used to go and stay with them. So she's staying with them, and my cousin's 3 or 4. And one morning they wake up, and my cousin says to my mum and her mum, "I was playing with the old man again last night." And they were like, "What do you mean you were playing with the old man?" I said, "The old man who comes every night to see me." And they were like,
God.
you know, whoop. So I think at the first time they just put it down to like, a 4-year-old's imagination.
Yeah.
And then it happened again a couple of days later. I think she turned around and said to my mum, "The old man came to see you last night." And my mum's like,
Right.
What? Like my mum's,
Yeah.
my mum wouldn't have just said what. My mum's more of an effing and jeffing type of mum.
Yeah.
So she's got my auntie and my uncle, and they've said, like, "What do you mean?" So they've sat her down, and she said, "So he comes and he has biscuits with me every night." And they got her to describe him. And the way she described him was obviously an old man. Height wise, she couldn't really say because obviously she's 4. But what she did say is that he had 2 fingers missing on one of his hands. And my uncle, his dad had 2 fingers missing on his hand.
Christ, and that's not something a kid would just make up, would it?
No, no, you wouldn't think that at all. So that was obviously, I think, one of my mum's first experiences of it, and the fact that like my mum knew my uncle's dad as well. So as soon as she said 2 fingers, they all went fucking probably white.
I mean, yeah, because that's not like he's got grey hair and he's wearing a naval uniform. You can go, "Oh, it's probably Uncle Steve." Do you know what I mean? That's specifics.
Yeah, definitely. And then in that same house, when people used to stay, I stayed quite regularly when I was young, and I never experienced anything. But a couple of the older people, like the older parts of my family, did. So like uncles and aunties. And I sent you a picture of the estate, what the house was. So it was like an old. Like I would say it was probably a 1950s estate. It's got all white. It was all white cladding. Probably in its day looked like a really nice place to live. But then obviously as it got into like the 80s and 90s, it's became a little bit decrepit again.
Out of date.
Yeah. So I would say that this was happening in the 80s. So they used to go down regularly, go on nights out and stuff, and people who slept in one of the rooms in the back room used to complain the next day all the time that there was a tree smashing against the window, there was noises outside, branches hitting the window, keeping them awake, and then they'd moan the next day. And my uncle used to say, "Look out the window," and they'd look out the window, and the tree was gone. It was just a stump. The tree had been the tree had been knocked down, like before they even bought the house, or chopped down, before they even bought the house. So that
something's been knocking on the window.
Yeah, but they said they always said they could see branches, like when you've got like a light outside, it's dark, and it's shining on the window, they could see like branches hitting the window.
So they could right? Okay, so it wasn't like it was just knocking sounds. They could actually see as in without saying a ghost tree, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think my uncle's words when he got up one morning was, "Fucking hell, Peter, you need to do something about that tree." And he went, "What do you mean?" He was like, "It fucking had me up all night." And he was like, "Look out the window, Chris." Looked out the window and the tree hadn't been there for a long time. It was just a big, and I remember the tree. It was just a big, massive stump. And obviously, as a kid, they're the type of things that intrigue you, aren't they? A big, massive stumpy thing to play on in the garden. And then, so following, obviously, there's that story. So that was what my mum told me. When my uncle came to, my uncle, whose dad it was without the 2 fingers, he used to then. He later on split up with my auntie, but was still very close with all the family. So he used to come and stay here quite regularly. He used to drink in Kirby. And one night we're just all sitting in the house talking, and my mates are there and that, and we get onto my ghost experience. And my uncle starts going, "Oh, let's not talk about ghosts. Don't want to really talk about ghosts." And we were like, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, because your dad visited Debbie, didn't she? And didn't he? And he was like, yeah, he said, but that wasn't the worst thing that ever happened. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, so he basically told me this story. So he was a taxi driver, but he also liked a bevy.
Right.
So when he wasn't,
them two things don't go hand in hand, do they? Let's be honest.
Not at all, mate. So I think he'd do something like four days on, 4 days off, but he'd work like 12 hours, and he'd work nights. So he was like finishing probably, any time.
Yeah, 6 a.m. or whatever.
Yeah, or I think even I think sometimes like on weekends it'd be like, as soon as he's took everybody home from nights out and that. And obviously, probably back then, nights out weren't as fueled by the devil's dandruff as they are now. So
definitely.
People were getting home,
reasonable hours,
2:00 and things like that. So he said these incidents never happened when he was sober. Sorry, when he was drunk. They only ever happened when he was sober. So he used to come home from when he'd been on the taxis. I think he said it went on for a period of about 14 days, and it was 14. He said it got to the point where, so it'd be he'd see it for 4 days, he'd go to work, he wouldn't see it for 4 days. When he was back working, he'd see it again. So it got to the point where he stopped going to work for a bit because he was seeing it that much. So he'd just get drunk because he knew when he was drunk and he never seen it. So he used to come home from work, and again, when he was telling me this story, he looked terrified as he was telling me it. And this story's been confirmed by his wife as well, who's also said, obviously she never seen what he's seen, but she confirmed that, like, they basically ended up getting the house exercised and stuff like that. So he used to come in from work. He'd come in through the front door. The lights would be on up on the landing. Downstairs, all the lights would be off. He'd open the front door, and the first thing he'd be greeted by, standing about 3 steps up, was a lady in like all black, just standing there. He could walk up the stairs and it'd move backwards.
Oh, no way. I'm just going to shiver right down my legs. Honestly, I fucking have.
But when he gets to his bedroom, it wouldn't move. So it wouldn't let him into the bedroom. So my auntie would be asleep in the bedroom. He'd be stuck on the landing. I mean, how he got the balls to even walk towards it? Had to be in back.
I was going to say, how he's fronting it down up the stairs. God knows.
But he'd go up the stairs. He'd shout me auntie, and my auntie. When we were kids, we weren't allowed.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to leave. Like my cousin, if we stayed, we weren't allowed to leave my cousin's bedroom until 10 o'clock because she was such a light sleeper. So if there was any noise, if you flushed the toilet or anything, there'd be blue murder because she'd be like, "You've ruined me sleeping." She could wake up at anything would wake her up. But whenever whatever it was there in the doorway and he was shouting it wouldn't wake. She wouldn't wake up.
Oh God!
So he'd end up sleeping downstairs, and then so that went on for a little bit, and then about, as I say, it got to the point where he stopped working, and he'd just go out and drink instead because he was just, we couldn't deal with coming home and seeing that, and then goes back to work because obviously he's got to work. Comes back one morning in the middle of dark morning, obviously wasn't there, and he thinks, oh great, he gets into bed, and as he gets into bed, it appears at the bottom of the bed, just standing at the bottom of the bed. Now, as I'm telling you this, I'm getting the same shivers I'm got when he told me it. He said, and then he's lying in bed shaking me auntie. My auntie won't wake up, and basically it came right up to his face at the side of the bed, just right up to his face, and looked in his face. And he just said it was the most horrifying experience he ever had in his life. So the next day they ring the local priest, the local vicar or whatever it was, and they basically come out and bless the house. And then they never seen it again. And I think they moved about a year later, something like that.
Wow. But, you know what? Literally, I've been holding my breath through that because it's horrible. It's a bloody amazing visual for a scary podcast. But there's loads of stuff even within that though, Tony, where like there's a few. I was talking about this on a show the other week about have you heard of Ed and Lorraine Warren?
Yeah,
the Warrens. They the one thing I don't really rate them, if I'm being honest, but the one thing that I did like was Lorraine gave a reasoning behind the Amityville murders, because apparently when when DeFeo went round and shot his family, the neighbours didn't hear these shotgun blasts, and unlike in the film where the Amityville house is like within an acre of its own land, in reality it's like 2 feet away from the neighbour's house. But the neighbours didn't hear a single shot being fired, although it was like a high caliber rifle, and it's apparently it's one of the only thing that's really bothered. Like the detective who looked at the case doesn't believe in anything paranormal, he says, but the one thing he can't explain is how the neighbours didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
And Lorraine Warren says evil has the power to kind of cloak sound.
Yeah.
So when you're saying there, you know, this thing stood in the doorway and your uncle's screaming for his missus and she can't hear a thing, that sent a shiver down my spine, because it's weird that there shouldn't be a continuity in these things, but apparently there is.
Yeah, and it's like, I know my uncle. I know people you don't, and the people listening don't. But all I can say is he's a man's man. He's you know, he likes a pint. He never ever spoke about that up until I sort of shared my experience with him about what happened to me. And like my mates were probably saying, "Oh, don't be daft. It was just probably a sheet or something." And then he was like, "Well, no, I've been in that situation too."
Wow.
So yeah, it was quite scary. I think that night as well, I had a terrible dream about her running after me, and as I was running, she was just like sort of floating alongside me, like couldn't go fast. But obviously,
good. Do you reckon what's going on?
Well, obviously that was just a dream. I think we talked about it that much that night. I think I was just terrified going to bed.
Here's one for you. What do you think? Is there because is Cassidy an Irish name?
Yeah, I think it probably is, isn't it?
I'm wondering if you've got like an attached banshee or a spirit. Maybe it was the same woman who was in your room.
Well, I say my woman didn't look happy, but she didn't look angry either. She was just
right.
She just looked like, it was just weird, like a weird expression on her face. But he said his was not happy. It didn't want him. It didn't want him in the bedroom. It didn't want him in the house.
So is it like protective of his wife?
I don't know.
Seems.
Maybe. I mean, they ended up having a really not. They're close again now, but like they had a few years where like they had some bad times. So you never know. It might have been, it could have been a relative wanting to get rid of him before she went through that.
Yeah.
Them hard times. I mean, obviously things happen in marriages, don't they? And I think he made a lot of things happen in that marriage that most women would not appreciate. So
right.
So it could have been something like that.
So your house where you've seen your lady.
Yeah.
Are you still? Is that still the house? Is that where you're living now? Like.
Yeah. Sorry,
I was just going to say, where is that in Kirby? Not the exact address, but which area?
It's so where St. Chad's Church is.
Yeah.
And then if you were walking towards the train station,
yeah,
it's pretty much the first big estate you come to, next to the church. So it's just off Kirby.
Sorry, go on. Right, okay. Because I'm thinking, because my mum and my dad, my family's from Kirby on my mum's side, and my mum and my dad lived in Shevington Lane. It was one of the first houses, but apparently the area at the back used to be a munitions factory or something.
No.
Apparently so. But the woman that we backed onto, this before I was born, but she apparently she'd only do tidying up at night, like plugging the hoover in and stuff. And it was to keep the kids awake, because during the day she'd see things in the house. And she didn't want the kids to be asleep and they'd be the only one whilst their husband was on nights. So she'd want them to stay awake. So she'd do all the hoovering and clattering around at night. So yeah, but I don't even know where that is, Shevington Lane, in comparison to where you are. Is it
it's sort of, so where I am, then there's the train track, and then Shevington Lane's pretty much at the back of the train track.
Really?
Yeah. So it's not far away from you. Like if it wasn't for the train track, I could be at Shevington Lane in about 2 minutes.
Right. So I wonder then if your houses are built on this former war factory as well as.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I've seen pictures of Kirby from a long time ago, and obviously the church is in it, because obviously
Right.
Kirby stands for church. I think Kirby means church on a hill, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Something
Well, I
like
don't
that.
know, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it means church on a hill, and obviously Saint Chad's Church was on a hill, so that's the main. Obviously, there's other churches, but that was the main church, and it's the oldest church in Kirby. But
Yeah.
when you look at pictures, this is all just fields.
Right.
But then that's not to say that there wasn't something here previously. I think these houses were built in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, because I'm pretty sure that it's that area that they lived, because we used to drive past and we'd go like, well, me mum and dad would say, let's go down to where we first lived.
Yeah.
But so have you got anything else to spook us with, Toe?
Yeah, I say that not really spooky as such, more like people who have experienced, or what I experienced. So I've obviously said about the family members who've seen people, but what a couple of things happened to myself. So I was going. My dad died when I was, well, God, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago now. And obviously at the time, because it was sudden, it was just not something that I dealt with. And I had to, obviously there was other things to deal with. Obviously my mum who was distraught, and funerals and stuff like that. And then I guess maybe about a year later is when it all started to sort of hit home. And I was probably in a bit of a bad place. And I remember being half awake, half asleep, and he came to me in my room. But it was definitely a dream. But it was a dream that I needed. So because it was a dream that I needed, I personally, because I believe in that type of stuff, I think it was his way. And he come to me in while I was in bed, and he just put his hands on me and said, "I'm okay, and I love you, and I'm proud of you," and that was it. And then I woke up. I don't know, like last year, I was struggling bad with anxiety, really bad with anxiety, to the point where I think I ended up in A&E 3 or 4 times thinking I was having a heart attack. And because I'd never experienced panic attacks, so I didn't really know what it was. And one of my cousins regularly goes to, is it a clairvoyant? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
So to regularly go to see this clairvoyant, and certain family members have always come through. Like one of my cousin who I told you earlier about, who's when she was 4, who's seen her granddad. So her husband committed suicide.
Christ.
And he regularly comes back and speaks to me, to my other cousins, through these clairvoyants. And I've never really asked what they say, because I am quite skeptical, or I was quite skeptical about them type of people. But apparently she's always spot on. But throughout it all, my dad had never ever been one of the people who would come through to them. And when I was struggling with my anxiety, apparently my dad came through and said, "Tell Tony to give his head a wobble. There's nothing wrong with him. He'll be fine."
That's lovely, that. So, but I mean, at the same time, is it something that your dad would have said, that, like, get a grip sort of thing?
Yeah, he would. Definitely would. And I think, like, one thing that my dad was always like dead good at was, even though he was like, he was a teacher, my dad. So he was always well spoken, but he always knew how to get his message across.
Yeah.
And the way I looked at it was that if my dad was going to come through to like someone like that, he would never give a lot of info out. He'd just be straight to the point and then be gone.
Right.
And I think, like, at that point, that's what I needed. I needed someone to say, "Give your head a wobble."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting though? The two points you've said there yourself, your own words. On those 2 occasions, you needed what you got. and it
Yeah.
was your dad both times. That's really,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
lovely. It's lovely.
definitely what I need. And as I say, I mean, obviously, we'll never know until I guess our time comes. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, I just there'd been other times where I'd needed it and it hadn't happened. So I know it's. I don't think it could be something that my brain would have created.
it's a good
But
point. Yeah,
yeah, and it was just at them times. Yeah, and like the first one I told you about, again, like I'm the same age as you, Kev. It made me
yeah,
cry. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I was lying in bed, bawling my eyes out.
Mm.
I mean, I'm not what like I've got family members who like I say my auntie passed away during COVID, and a lot of my cousins would love my auntie to come and see them.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't. Like I don't. You know, I think even if I seen the cutest person or the person who I love the most in the world as a ghost, I think it'd terrify me.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I'm the same. Yeah,
I don't think I'd ever want to see it in that way. But so I think for me, the like if it wasn't my dad's way of doing it, again, it's something that he'd have known that I would never have wanted to see him as like a ghostly figure coming to
yeah,
say, yeah, everything's all right, ghost of Christmas past style. It was just like what, just like that way. Was perfect for me because it wasn't scary.
yeah,
And I think any other way for me it'd be scary. My cousin, one of my cousins, regularly feels like somebody's sitting on the end of a bed next to her,
mm.
but then when she looks, there's nobody there, and she always thinks it's my auntie Sue who passed away.
See, but I'd
But
be the opposite way with that. If I felt that on the side of my bed, I'd be like, that's the devil. That's not like me nan or something.
yeah, I'm the same, Kev. I mean, I was listening to one of your podcasts a couple of days ago, and someone was talking about cupboard doors opening, or it
Yeah.
might have been the one where you were in the Adelphi, and
Oh yeah.
I'm just looking at the cupboard door at the bottom of my bed, thinking, "Do not fucking open, do not do that." But yeah, so yeah, I guess they're my experiences, mate. And I say people who believe will listen, and they, again, a lot of people have had strange experiences, and other people can put them strange experiences down to anything, but I can't put mine down to anything other than
No.
there being something else. Like,
Yeah. I mean, it's thank you so much for coming on, To, because like I say, it started off just a couple of messages back and forth where you told me one or two of the stories. And then you kind of hinted at the one with your uncle's house, and I was like, you can't just leave that there. Like, I think you told me what had happened to you, and that, like, seeing the woman in the chair, and then you said like, oh yeah, and my uncle had his house exercised anyway, and I was like, no, never mind. Anyway, you're gonna have to like crack on with that.
No, mate. I mean, I say it's been like as soon as I listen to your things, I mean, I've really enjoyed like the podcast. I mean, I've never really big into podcasts, but started listening to and obviously I listen to like all your music and stuff like that, and listen to your podcast with Jericho.
Yeah.
And then obviously I thought, well, I know that he does it, so I'll have a little listen. And as soon as I listened to one, I was just hooked on them. I mean, even your Wednesday rambles, mate. Which obviously it's Wednesday now, and I've just noticed you haven't put it up yet. But
I haven't actually. Yeah, I've good notice. I've literally got this handheld thing here to put it on when I finish with you, because I've got everything set up.
Even then, mate, I enjoy it. I mean, so obviously I haven't listened to like some of the really like ones from the beginning, but I did come across the one with the little old woman standing in the garden the other day,
yeah.
which absolutely terrified me. And like I was looking at like the picture, thinking, oh my, like what is that? That didn't even look human, did it?
No, I know, and I haven't seen it since. And it's from this room that I've seen it as well. And you've just put the fear of God into me. Now I've got the blind up here. I can look right into that back garden from here. And if she appears, I'm going through the window.
It also got me thinking, like, obviously, because we spent a lot of time together when we were in Leeds and that. And if you remember that hotel right next to the train station in Leeds, can't remember what it was called.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called, but yeah.
Yeah, but like that was a really old hotel. It was a creepy hotel, wasn't it?
Yeah,
like it was like, have you ever seen that hotel? the American Horror Story, the hotel one with
Yeah.
Lady Gaga, and it was very similar to that, wasn't it? Like
Yeah.
the bar and stuff like that was very like Art Deco.
Yeah.
But it baffles me that we never ever really spoke about, because obviously
Spooky stuff.
I'd had them experiences when, like, obviously I've known you, and it's mad that we'd never really spoken about them.
No, it is, yeah, because I'm normally I've always thought to myself as somebody who just bangs on about ghosts all the time. But I think maybe 20 years ago, just interested in women and beer at the time, so no room for anything else.
We had obviously loads of other people around us who would have probably ridiculed us for
Exactly, yeah.
but no, mate, thanks for having me on. I say I've enjoyed being on and telling you the story. I mean, it's not something a lot of people have told a lot of people that story, and it's up to them, isn't it, to believe it or not?
Well, yeah.
And you won't believe it until it happens to you, and when it happens to you, then you'll be in the same boat where people won't believe you.
Exactly, yeah. But it's sincerely like, thank you for coming on, because I appreciate that. I know what you like, and you're not the sort of burst into a pub and say, "Here's me ghost stories." So I do sincerely appreciate you coming on. And also, like, we just mentioned earlier, this is like the third attempt at recording this that we've done, because something doesn't want us to have this conversation.
No.
And it's seriously bizarre. It's the first time it's took this long to get like what will end up being about 35 minutes audio. Just bizarre. So I think that you've probably got that old woman fucking about with your broadband at the minute.
Well, I'm gonna go and sellotape me cupboard doors shut. Make sure there's no strange dogs in the house.
I don't blame you, mate. Remove all chairs.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, just anything, mate. I'll probably hear bumps in the night and everything now, because it's one of them, isn't it? When you think about it, you do tend to overthink about it, and you can pop up little bits. But no, I appreciate it, mate, and I've enjoyed being on. And as I say, I enjoy listening to all your shows, and I will continue to do so.
Well, thank you very much, Tone. And we'll have to get together for a physical pint, and although we're both just bemoan that we don't drink anymore, we'll get together and have a Diet Coke sometime soon.
Yeah, well, I don't even do caffeine anymore, Kev. So we're maybe green tea.
Fucking hell, how times have changed, eh?
Hello. Right.
All
nice
right,
one,
then, mate.
Kev.
Thank you, dude. Speak to you in a bit. Ta-ra now.
Ta-ra.